Hey, it's your boy Chrys, Players Pick Podcast, here to shout out my sponsor, Road Roaster Coffee. Road Roaster Coffee makes an amazing array of light, medium, and dark roasts. My favorite is this kick ass right here. You can check out roadroastercoffee.com and use Players Pick as your coupon code for 20% off your very first order. Enjoy the pod.
Players Pick Podcast, picks and perspective with Chris Johnson. Palpable. Paradox. Polarity. PG.
Here we are. How you doing?
Good morning. All right, I guess it's almost noon there for you.
No, it's very much morning for me.
Nice to meet you, Kurt.
You as well. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh man, it's an honor. It's a pleasure. You've been around for a while doing this thing called life and making a lot of great music through the years. So man, sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I've been doing it a long time and I feel it. That's for sure too. It's been a long time, but I've been really fortunate to keep making music, man. That's what it's about.
Yeah. That's a thing that as a reoccurring theme that I feel like I see in you and in when I was looking around, previous interviews and stuff, is that you have a deep sense, seem to have a deep sense of gratitude towards everything that has come your way, and I can feel it in the music too. Obviously, I think, but sometimes people can write lyrics and say things and then have a different disposition a little bit, but yours feels really genuine.
No, I've met very different personalities. I worked with different personalities in this business where they felt like everybody owed them something. And I never understood that, because I always felt like we were getting away with murder by being able to play music and survive another day, right? And enjoy it. It felt so rewarding and so fulfilling to me. And I'm just like, what's not to love here? Because I worked in factories, growing up and stuff. So I know what it feels like to do other things. And it can be kind of a torture when you compare to this. So when I would meet people who weren't feeling that gratitude about it, I never understood that, because boy, this, even when we were on the major label, people would complain about how awful it was. And I always felt like, God, this is great. These people are bankrolling us to go out and put out records and go on tours. And all we got to do is try to write good songs. I was all for it.
Yeah. So there's that thing that sometimes maybe the average person kind of misses a little bit, in that these necessary tensions that need to be supplied in life so that we can then really appreciate the release, that part where, necessary trade-offs, right? So, okay, we don't get to do things every little way we want to, but like you said, they're bankrolling the thing. There's a lot that we're not having to take care of here.
Yeah, I think the moment you sign a contract with a record company is the moment that you're in business with somebody, and it's not just about you expressing yourself musically. It's also about a business that you just got into with somebody. And I think a lot of artists kind of didn't understand that at the beginning, when they got into it. And it's not just about your creative vision at that point. You got to realize you're in business, because if it was just about your creative vision, you could stay home and do it in your bedroom. You don't need to sign a record contract. But when you decide to sign that contract, now you're in business with someone, and you have to understand that they're looking for a return. And so to me, I think I always understood that. And so it all made sense to me to try and do what we wanted to do. And luckily Warner Brothers was really supportive of us, all those years. Obviously they wanted us to get on the radio and things like that, but they were always pretty supportive of us being who we were, and really liked the music we were doing. So I always felt we were really lucky in that regard.
Yeah, man. Luck is a big part of it in a way, right? And
it's huge. Yeah, it's absolutely huge. You could have all the talent in the world, and a lot of people do, but those lucky breaks can make all the difference. That's for sure.
I feel very similar. I mean, I feel like I can think back to so many times in my life where I'm like, how I was just standing in the right place at the right time. Yes, I was the right person to be standing in the right place at the right time, but so easily I could have been standing 3 feet to the right and not been in that place,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. But I think about the good times and what it's, led me to my place here now. And, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And that in itself is a place of finding ourselves grateful and thankful that we're still standing, that we still have, opportunities right here in front of us to,
Funny story. When we were very young, local band, some more bigger funded bands around our area were going to play a showcase for Capitol Records. And so all these bands were on, and Capitol Records said, look, just throw as many bands on as you can and stuff. And we were like a last minute thing that they threw on first of 3 bands, because we were just kind of becoming popular in Milwaukee. And so, nobody thought we would be seen, but sure enough, by the end of the night, the Capitol Records people fell in love with us, the first of 3 bands, and hated all the Duran Duran bands that came on after us. We didn't even have a bass player. We were just 2 guitars and drums up there with a lot of energy. And but it's exactly what we're talking about. It was like we were in this spot. We didn't even think anything of it, right? We were just going up there and playing. And by the end of the night, we had interest from Capitol Records where other bands didn't, that they thought they were going to be the band. I mean, they paid for it all. We just happened to be there.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. That reminds me also of just, you talk about having the factory jobs and stuff like that, and there was a season where I got roped into selling Kirby vacuum cleaners door to door. And if you know about those things, but it's a tough gig, man. You walk into a neighborhood, try to set an appointment, come back and sell somebody a $2,000 vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous gig, but it was always, not always, but a lot of times, I was thankful to have a really good van crew leader, Dave, and he would, coach me into like, don't prejudge these situations. Like if you prejudge them too much, you're not going to sell, and you're not going to do well in this thing. Just go in, have a good time. Don't be worried about closing the deal, and just be present and see what happens. And 9 times out of 10, it was that attitude that you'd walk into a house that, part of you already judged it anyway. And you weren't going to sell anything, but those things, turn around so quickly, and people, the humanity that you display, tends to like go a long ways, in situations like that.
Well, they say that, in life, all those concepts that you have about stuff can really get in the way of stuff. And it's very much like that when a band is young and they go out and tour their first time and stuff, they get really down sometimes because it's, you're playing terrible places with blown speakers and not good, and your gear's falling apart and you're beyond tired and stuff like that. And it's not what you dreamed of when you were in your bedroom dreaming of being a rock star and stuff. And it can be a hard thing and a hard lesson for people. And it's better if you just don't prejudge all that stuff and just take it a day at a time. Wherever you are, you try to play your best show, your best performance, but if you have all those big ideals about where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be doing and how perfect it's supposed to be, well, then you're in trouble. And I think it's like that in everyday life, everywhere you go, it's like that it's best to just deal with whatever, whenever, however you can.
Yeah. One thing at a time. I mean, it's easy to be constantly concerned about the past or, anxious about the future and trying to shape it how you want it. When the answer oftentimes lies in like, well, what's here right now, and how is this workable? How can I, how can I be of service to the situation? How can I close the gap if there's a conflict or an issue? But so often we're like, oh no, I just don't want to deal with that, or and we kind of run from the thing mentally or physically. And you
start to shut down sometimes, and that's the worst thing, especially in what we do, which is a creative process. Is you just don't want to shut down get lost in some personality thing, right? You're supposed to be up there just expressing and giving. So, I'm lucky now. I've been doing it for so many years that I've been able to learn all that stuff. So when I walk out there, of course, there's going to be problems and situations, but you try to just bounce with it and make the most of it too. And it's a far better way to approach everything we do. If the PA shuts down halfway through your song, what are you going to do? You got to make the most of it, right? And have fun with it. And so that's what you do.
Yeah, that's where comedy comes in, try to make light of it. Keep moving. Well,
Yeah.
and that's a good point or to ask you about too, is that because your career has been so long at this point, and you've had so many great albums and experiences. I'm supporting some of the greatest people, other peers in the world. I looked at some of the list of some of the people you've toured with, Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, David Bowie, all this stuff. What would you say is different? Is there anything different really about the process for you these days, like from when you started out? Like, is it better? Is it worse?
Yeah, no, there's not much difference. That's the thing. I was always the music guy in the band. So because I had grown up playing drums and then learned guitar and stuff like that, I had spent my entire high school years, just locked in a band room, learning to play whatever I could. So I could escape all the rest of the life that was going on in high school. And so from our first recordings we ever did, I was just building tracks up, playing drums and playing guitars over them and stuff. And so all the years in BoDeans, that's kind of what we did. And so it just kind of became our sound, was me kind of building tracks up and I'm playing them that way, and it worked for us. It kind of became our sound. And so that's still kind of the way I do it, especially even on this newest record. Don't get me wrong, I love to go in with a full band in a beautiful studio and a great engineer and do the whole perfect record when you can. But more often than not, I find that's really difficult to do these days more than ever. So this record was just that same kind of idea of, you have an idea for a song or a sound and you start throwing colors at the wall and seeing where it goes and what sticks and what you like or what's interesting and stuff like that. And so in that respect, I'm still doing it like I did from our very first recordings we ever did up until now. It's the same kind of process for me. I guess that's kind of all I know how to do. I know I could go into the studio with someone else and just kind of play something for them, but when it comes to BoDeans, it's the same process. It's been working. I guess I don't know how else to do it really, other than, like I said, if you hire a bunch of different musicians and do that, that would be fun, but it can be extremely expensive project that way too.
What about technologically, like, from the early days of recording to now, with having more kind of ability to kind of fuss around with everything? Do you enjoy the modern way of doing things, or do you still have some basic kind of thread that you have kept through the years within the recording process?
Well, I'm an old schooler, so I still kind of, even though we're recording on a computer now, I just see it as a recorder, and I remember those early years in the studio and the engineer telling me to go home and learn the song and come back and sing it, and I'm just like, but I wrote this song. And what do you mean go home and learn? And T-Bone Burnett said that to us when he first came out and saw us before we did the first record too. The first thing he said was, y'all need to go home and learn how to play. And I was just like, wow, it was harsh, but it was accurate. I mean, we were all energy, that's what we did. It was all about, to me, rock and roll was just about energy, expressing that youth and angst and all this stuff. And we were really good at that, but we were by no means virtuosos on our instruments. But at the same time, T-Bone was telling us that he went back to the record company and said, these guys are the next Beatles. If you don't sign them, you're crazy. So he was playing both sides kind of, but he was really brilliant producer that way and a lot of fun to work with. But, we weren't the virtuoso guys. I didn't sit in my room practicing scales ever in my life. To me, it was about, I like simple melodies and simple songs that are really singable and catchy. And so I've always concentrated on that rather than, and that's not to knock any of the people who really know how to play. I think that's a brilliant, great thing too. I really do. And I think there's room for all of it in music, you know, every bit of it. What you do and how you express yourself, it's a wide open world. That's the beautiful thing about music. And it's like the snowflake thing, like everybody's different, right? Everyone's approaching it their own way. And I think the more we mix it up with all the different stuff too, the more interesting it becomes. So I'm all about it, but that was our process, just keeping it simple.
Mm. It's great, man. Well, it really shows, I mean, that I think that's part of the craft of songwriting, right? Is really like distilling down getting to the core of the idea and allowing yourself to kind of work from that simple melody, that simple line, or that riff, or the whatever the thing is, and trying to continue to reimagine and let it unfurl as it needs to, without having to add too much, you know, being careful of not adding too much in the sauce, right?
Yeah, that's one thing T-Bone taught us right from the get-go too, was we would come in some days and we would have this high energy song and he'd be like, well, let's play it as a ballad today. And we'd like totally sit down and we'd play it like really down as this beautiful, and we'd spend a whole day doing that, you know. And his whole point was, we never used it, but his whole point was just like, you need to find the soul of the song, he would talk about, and just really focus on that. Like, what's really going on here? What's the important thing? And focus on that. So from early on, I think, you know, we always felt that we were all about songs and songwriting from the get-go, but he really reinforced that for us, that this is what you need to find, because you can have a really great idea as far as you know, a guitar line or a hook or a melody or something, but it may just be an idea still, you know, until it becomes a song. That's something very different, and you got to make sure you have that core song thing instead of just an idea.
Yeah, that's really great to remember for anybody out there working on songs. I mean, like, that's for myself. I have 1,000 ideas a minute, but like, can you give them the space to develop, you know?
Yeah, that's the harder job. It's always a bigger job. You know, I think everybody, I do it too. You put down ideas, but then to sit down with that idea and try to flush it out, that's where it becomes work, really. And throughout the years, you know, I've just tried to get better at that, at the craft of creating a song, parts that flow together and work together, a song that has a real kind of message at the end of the day and stuff, or, you know, an emotion that you're trying to express that's really happening in the song. That's all those things are where the work of it comes through. It's not just about, can you play a guitar part in time or something? There's a bigger message behind it all.
Yeah. Speaking of which, this new album, For the Last Time, wonderful from start to finish. Just
Thank you.
I've listened to it probably 5-6 times now, and just really kind of tuning in more and more each time with the lyrics. The lyrics get a little more present each time you go through. You hear them in a slightly different way, and this opening track, "Loved," is so wonderful. And then I read somewhere that it's about your kids, maybe, you know, and trying to.
Well, it's about both my childhood and my kids. You know, I write a story on the liner notes about when I was a kid. I used to go to the grocery store with my mom. I was about 3 years old, and she'd get really frustrated with me because I was fascinated by all the colors and the lights and the products and stuff, and so I'd want to see everything. And she used to say to me, if you don't stay with me, I'm going to leave you here. And sure enough, one day I turned around and she was gone, and I couldn't find her. And I literally figured she went home without me and walked out of the store, and was about to cross this real busy street in downtown Milwaukee. And all of a sudden, this old woman grabbed my arm from behind just as I was stepping out in traffic. And I always felt like this lady must have been some kind of guardian angel or something. And she brought me back into the store, brought me to the manager, and it took a few minutes. They announced on the store, like, we got a lost kid. And then my mom finally showed up. And, you know, I thought that was somewhat normal childhood experience. But when I had kids, it's like, I would have never allowed that to happen to my kid. You know, it's like, I wanted my kid to know that I wasn't never going to leave them in a store or something like that. They were always going to know that they were loved and cared for, and like your most precious thing in life, that they mean the world to you. And so that's when I wrote the song. Then my kids were very little. Now they're 20 years old, but the song kind of sat around for a lot of years. I just wanted to get it out on a record for them and for the world to hear, that difference in feeling. I think a lot of our generation were raised different than what we raise our kids now. And I think Loved is kind of speaking to that.
Yeah, and being the change in the generational situation, right? Like feeling the gap of like how you would have liked to have been treated now that you're old enough to kind of look back in that with these different pair of lenses.
Yeah.
And especially as a father, wanting to make sure that they know that they're loved. I love that lyric. I love where you took that, and I mean, I just think that's one of the greatest things that we can do in life is assess what has happened to us in some sort of semi-objective way, and make the change to go, okay, I'm not going to be just a product of what happened to me.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's really, really tough. I mean, anyone knows who even begins to dig into that. That's really a big, long journey sort of to do that. But, that there was a song called Nature Boy that Nat King Cole sang when I was little. I just was always struck by it. And there's that lyric in there, the greatest thing you can ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. That just stuck with me my whole life. Like, that's just so true. And I once read about the guy who wrote that song. That was the only song he ever wrote in his life. And it was everything about that song was really strange and mystical to me. But I hung on to it forever, especially the way Nat King Cole sang it. It's just so beautiful. And the string arrangements in it are beautiful, everything. So I think that was kind of in my head too when I was working on Loved, as a song. I just wanted that message to be out there that had stuck with me my whole life.
That's wonderful. That's incredible that it's like the one song that the guy wrote. And
yeah, I know that's what I read. Who knows if it's absolutely true, but if it is, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's the legend anyway.
It's a beautiful, beautiful song, and with a beautiful message in it, and something we can all kind of learn from.
Yeah, I will have to say that just looking down the list of the songs on this album too. I mean, I really, again, I've enjoyed all of it, and I could probably spend a few hours just talking about each track or whatever. But this is it. I'm a Mess. This song, and there was some liner notes or something about this kind of maybe being inspired by Tom Petty. And
oh no, that's A Little More Time, right?
Oh, little more time.
Exactly. That song, I just started. I stumbled onto the chorus, and I just immediately. It was after Tom had died, and I was just really kind of struck by all of that because, you go and start listening to the radio, the streaming stuff of his songs and stuff after he died, and it was just like endless amount of not just hit songs, but phenomenal songwriting and stuff. And I just reflected on how big Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were just growing up for me, on the radio, and I would live with their records for years at a time, So it was kind of a big blow to me. And so I wanted to, when I started writing that song, I literally started singing it like Tom Petty, in his voice kind of, because it reminded me of that how he would sing it. And it reminded me of kind of a late 70s Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers song, one that might have not made it to the record. But anyways, I wanted to dedicate it to them because they had given so much to me, so much happiness as a kid growing up and listening to their music, and very much a Tom Petty kind of song. And so I was glad to get that one on the record.
That's awesome. I mean, I have to admit, I saw Tom a couple times, once at the Gorge Amphitheater out in Washington, which was phenomenal. And then I don't know, less than a year before he passed in Sonoma County at a festival there. And I just always have felt growing up, my dad was super into Tom Petty, played him all the time when I was young. And so like, I just had all these like tunes that like sat just like in the back of my head. And to me, that was rock and roll. That was cool. That was like songwriting. That was, and his voice just felt like an extra parental voice in my head somehow. And when he passed, like I just, I felt it really deeply too. I cried for a lot, and then I had to shut it off because, I mean, not only in the kid, like when I was young growing up, I'm 76 born, so I had plenty of like early 80s and stuff to listen to a lot of this stuff. But then it was in high school when Wildflowers was released, and I was
Yeah.
like, what, how does Tom Petty, the guy that I loved as a kid, put out this album at this point in
Yeah.
his career and just blow us all away?
Yeah, no, he had that timeless gift. If he was still alive today, he would have another hit song out today, because when he wrote stuff, it was just timeless. It could span any, and you can go listen to the stuff in the 70s and it's still relevant today. It's the same thing that I try to focus on, of this classic songwriting that can span time, of these songs that you just can sing at any time, and they're relevant because they're kind of universal messages, about life. And we can feel that no matter where we are in life, and they can be relevant no matter where you are in life, and they can pick you up. That's what I try to do with my music and BoDeans shows too, is I try to lift people up. I want them to feel good in their lives. And I get a lot of good letters from people about when it works for them and stuff. So it's a positive thing, but Tom was a master at that. He was really good at it, and happy I could just do something or say something about it.
Did you have any interactions with him when you played in support with Tom?
We didn't get ever to open for Tom. I did work with Mike Campbell on, we worked with him, what was supposed to be our second record, and did some songs, but the record company wasn't really happy with what we did together. And so I kind of scrapped it, and we ended up working with Jerry Harrison instead. But I love Tom, I mean, I love Mike as well. And I had really wished, it seemed like on paper it was the perfect thing to do. I had grown up with him, but it just didn't work. But that was kind of the closest that we ever got to work doing anything, but I never met Tom, and I'm fine with that. I don't like meeting any heroes like that. When I like someone for their music, that's what I like. And I don't want any personality to get in the way of that.
That's a great boundary to have, honestly.
Yeah.
I've worked in this business for like 15, 20 years, and like I've met a lot of my heroes, and sometimes it's not great.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. People have personalities, and they're human, and so they're not always super nice or what you want them to be. So I figured that even when I was young. So I'm just happy with the music they do for the music's sake.
Yeah, that's good, man. And I can appreciate that. I never met Tom either, but I did work with his band a bit for a few years, and I got invited to a couple of dinners where the band was hanging, and Tom walked through, and I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I just like same kind of vibe, but you know what, leave that guy alone. He's already given you how much, so
Yeah, we recorded at Paisley Park, and Prince was there too, and it was the same thing. I just wanted to, everyone's like, don't talk to Prince, don't even look at him, all this kind of stuff. But I just felt like it was a bunch of BS. Like, it would be nice to just sit down and talk and stuff like that. But even though we walked by each other a few times, I never approached him either, because I figure, it's his space, it's his place. If he wants to talk to me, he'll talk to me.
Right. Yeah. So in looking back on your career too, part of my little podcast here is I like hearing about your relationship to the guitar pick, and like where that first started. If you remember anything about your first guitar picks, and if anybody inspired you to pick it up and use it a certain way, and then have you changed through the years? Do you play the same pick or something different these days?
Everything I do on guitar somehow is backwards. I'll say that much. Like, from the day I first got a guitar, I started tearing them apart and putting them back together different ways and stuff. And I did the same thing with the guitar pick. I used a nylon Dunlop pickup, and I don't play it with the point out. I play it backwards. I turn it because it has ridges on it, and I could use those ridges to kind of scrape the string when I would play. And so, and songs like Good Things, which is really one of our most popular songs in the Midwest and stuff, that was really a vital part of the sound, was how that pick was hitting the string. And as on many songs I play, even the early records where you hear Fade Away and Still the Night, where the guitar is starting with a lick, it's that backwards pick thing, that scraping, those edges on that pick, scraping the string, that made the sound. And so I can only work with that pick. I can't pick up a regular plastic pick and just use. I mean, I can do it, but it's not going to be the same. It's going to be more plucky and less scrapey sounding. And I love the scrapey kind of sound of it. So it's always backwards like that. And then throughout the years, I just kind of stopped using picks and started using my fingers a lot more. But because of those early songs being recorded that way during a live show, I'm always picking it up and putting it down between songs, because some songs you just have to use the pick on because that's the way it was recorded and that's the way it sounds right. And so I still use the Dunlops. I still use them backwards. And I don't know of any other pick I can use. And the rest of the time, my thumb is now my pick. And, I really like that as well, too, because in essence, when you're doing the claw thing, you have like 3 or 4 picks going at once. And so and I find, how you hit the string is just such a big part of guitar playing and guitar tone, whether it's a pick or your fingers. How you're striking that string makes so much difference to your sound and what you're doing.
That's very cool. And do you remember, I mean, was there a cognitive moment when you're like, oh, the regular way that people hold this pick is stupid. Like, I want to hold, like, it sounds better to me here.
Well, yeah, I mean, the regular way you hold a pick, it's fine for strumming an acoustic, but for electric, it just seemed like it stuck out too far. It was too pointy, and kind of, to me, it was like it gets in the way. And the other way was rounder and it didn't stick out as far. And it just struck me as it made more sense. But I must have stumbled onto the Dunlop picks at some point where I found that scraping sound for me was going to, that I liked. It made the sound thicker somewhat, somehow. And like I said, BoDeans, when we started, we didn't have a bass player. We were electric, acoustic, and drums for like all the way right up until we went out to make the first record, really, before we brought in a bass player to kind of fill the sound out. But so I was having to cover kind of bass, string, as well as rhythm guitar, and then sometimes trying to do lead stuff at the same time. And so it was covering a lot of ground. And so when the pick kind of thickened up those notes on the low tones, it was just helping, it was helping all the things I was doing rather than being just thin and plucky. It was being thicker.
That's awesome. Did I read somewhere that, did you add another pickup to your guitar or something like that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I tear guitars apart a lot and would rebuild them. But in the early years, I couldn't find, using a bridge pickup was too thin without the bass player scenario. So I needed to find a sound that was rounder sounding. And I really wasn't aware of how the Strat players just used the neck pickup all the time for stuff. So I was using a Tele. So what I did is I had a P90 pickup that I found from some Japanese import guitar, and I literally glued it down, super glued it to the pick guard, not quite in the neck position or the middle position. It was kind of in between, and it was kind of at an angle. And for the longest time, even on the first record, that's the sound I had, was that P90 pickup glued down. You had no kind of adjustable pole, anything on there. And it was just,
wow.
It was, it would fall apart, the magnets would come off. I'd have to glue it back onto the coil. And it was like that forever, for a long time, I should say. And then finally, when I met some guitar builder people, I would say, hey, can you put a pickup here, like a real one? And then they started adding some different pickups for me in other years. But I eventually got to this place where I thought, why am I keep looking around for pickups when I can just custom make one more the way I want? And so now I build my own guitars because I've learned enough about woods and necks and pickups and electronics that I know what I want.
Mm.
And it's easier for me just to do it myself, kind of, because I know what I like. And so in the recent years, because my playing has turned more to using my hands and fingers and fingernails for playing, that I design them for that. And then I try to make them as versatile as possible, because I have to go back and be able to do some of those early sounds as well. So that I need the guitar to be able to be very versatile in its sound. So I got a system that kind of works for me now, and I like it.
That's awesome. I mean, that's like one of the coolest things. A lot of great guitar players, have kind of, especially in the early days, decided that they couldn't find exactly what they wanted and started in that modification. Eddie Van Halen was one of them, right?
Yeah.
Famously. And
Yeah, and I think that's the best way to do it. I'm a person who never took lessons on anything and never went to school for music, because I think it's the best way to really find those things yourself. It can be, I guess, a great advantage if someone says, "Oh, here's the way it is. Here's what we all learn," and go run with it. And that can be great too. But there's nothing like learning something yourself from experience in life. You really know it then. And so that's what I did. I would try pickups, change them. I was reversing the polarity on the pickup, the north-south direction of coils, and mixing them long before I ever read that this is what some people did for a sound. I was just like, wow, that's cool. I just like the way it sounded. And so I thought I was doing everything backwards all this time. But then you read that, yeah, a lot of people have been experimenting and messing around with this stuff for a lot of years. And if you can find something that sounds right to you, then just run with it.
that's awesome. How long have you been building the guitars, and do you build the necks also? Do you order neck and then like shape it, or how does that process work?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not a building it, I'm not chopping down a tree and then building a guitar out of it. There's like a guy in Canada who cuts bodies. So I could say, hey, do you have any of this wood? I want a one-piece body, and I want it routed in the back, and I want it, a humbucker 2 single coil, and a maple top or something like that. And he'll do that for me. And then I can go to this other company and say, I want this neck, and here's the radius I want, and here's what I want on top, and here's what the frets I want. And they'll build it for me. But I luckily, I'm not having to do it all myself, but I'm just kind of designing it all and then putting it together. And then Seymour Duncan sends me pickups so I can experiment with different sounds. And then I have a wiring that I really like that I've developed over the years too. And I just kind of wire it up, and it has that sound.
That's cool. Have you found a radius that you prefer on the neck, on the fretboard?
It's getting closer. I still experiment a lot. I still haven't found everything that's precisely, if at first I was going bigger, and then the guitar itself didn't feel balanced enough for me. And so I started going a little bit smaller in the radius and trying to find a real comfortable kind of middle ground with it. And so I still experiment with it a lot. More important to me is getting the quarter sawn kind of neck and the hard rock maple, and I'm more of a fan of the rosewood, type fingerboards and stuff like that. But I found throughout the years, because I like sliding up around the neck more, that I use a very low frets on my guitars. I don't use, like a lot of people, like the medium to taller frets, and I don't. It just, my fingers feel like they get stuck sliding around on the neck. So I use very low radius frets on my guitars.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's the common thing these days is, jumbo, medium jumbo, extra jumbo. It's not too often you hear somebody goes, no, I like the lower frets,
Super. I get them, as low as I can, and in stainless steel, just so they last longer. And I can slide around kind of like a slide guitar would. And I just found that to be an interesting sound. And so I've had a few reviewers on this record say, I really love all the slide guitar you play on this record. And I didn't have the heart to say I don't play any slide guitar on this record. It's just, it sounds like it because I'm kind of emulating that sound, but it's not actual slide. I love the sound of slide, but I don't like how it limits what you're doing with your other hand, and so I found a way to kind of emulate that sound and still have my fingers free up to play whatever else I want.
Well, I'm glad that you answered that before I asked, because I was going to say, hey, the slide guitar sounds good.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I have played slide on many of our records, and I do love the sound of it. But this is a way I could just kind of fake it. I'm doing a lot of that with the trem bridge with my other hand. I've developed a way of kind of swooping up to notes a lot because I love that sound, and so it does sound a lot like a slide.
Okay. Wow, that's unique in itself.
It is. I don't think, like a lot of people come up to me after shows and they're like, I don't know what you're doing up there because it looks like your hand's not really barely even moving, but I hear all this sound coming out, and I figured out that's just kind of the way it is. People really don't quite know there's something happening there, but I haven't seen anyone else kind of doing it that way. The closest is kind of Jeff Beck does it, but he does it a different way. He does it with his finger out there on the trem, pushing it down, up and down. And I don't do that. I have the bar buried in my palm to do it. So it's real kind of a different technique, but he has that same kind of thing where he'll like swoop up in and out of notes like that, but yet differently. He'll like push his bridge down to a different note. I never do that, but I will swoop up to the notes and stuff like that. And so it's a technique that I just kind of found for myself that I really enjoy, but I haven't seen anybody else doing it.
That's great. That's cool. And it's great to hear that it's like this other, because you make it, like when I'm listening to the music, I'm not distracted so much that I'm like, oh, what, but I'm like, that's wonderful. Yeah, it kind of sounds like slide, whatever. And then you keep going on with the song, but to hear the process behind it, that's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I wanted something different too. That wasn't, so many guys are so good with their left hand playing the vibrato tremolo on their notes. Those blues guitars. The Steve Lukather's or just wah, and they're so good at that. But I found it was almost hard to identify people because so many of them were good at it. So I really wanted to develop a way of doing a vibrato sound with things, but that it wasn't necessarily just that same thing that other people are already so good at doing. So in my way of doing it, I can do a nice tremolo on a note, but I can also do it on a chord and stuff, So for me, that was more fulfilling.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Kurt, do you consider yourself a spiritual person of any kind? Do you have like a spiritual practice of some sort?
I would say very much spiritual, but I don't follow like a religion. I'm one of those people who feel like you're walking through your spiritual life every moment of every day, like that's all there is. Everything is spiritual. We are all connected. It's all one thing and all that kind of stuff. I spent a lot of years reading about religions around the world and studying philosophies, and I was always really attracted to it. But I always felt like our minds are kind of too small to comprehend what's really going on out there with it, But there's some basic principles that you find in all religions, like of don't harm other people, don't steal from people and do good things, And so my life has always been with music, especially it's been about trying to create some positive energy in the world. I'd never wanted to be someone who just takes from the world. I just need more. I want more money. I want more power. I want more for me. With music, you're able to like put out this positive energy into the world and kind of give something. I felt like it was like, it made sense to me in a philosophical, spiritual way. Music always touched me in a real spiritual way. There's something going on there that transcends words and notes alone, And so that's why I play music, and that's why I try to make a living in it, even when it gets tough, is that it feels like I'm doing something really positive in the world that is what we should do while we're here, rather than just take, And so in that regard, that's kind of my religion. That's my spiritual place that I reside in.
Well, I love it. It reminds me of, I don't know if you read or know of the book Ishmael by Daniel Quinn.
Yeah, I know.
It's a kind of like a story about this gorilla who is like self-aware, and he's kind of explaining to his caretaker, to this person. I can't remember exactly how the story unfolds, but ultimately one of the themes that comes out is, he says that, that it's about moving from being a taker to being a giver,
Yeah.
and shifting our awareness from that we are inherently, at least as the society has developed, we're takers predominantly, and to shift our awareness around that.
Which is what I talk about in the first song, Loved. Not going to leave you to the world of the takers. That's one of the lyrics in Loved. It's like, I want to guide my children through that, because that is the world. I don't understand this world at all. I really don't, and never have. Even as a kid, I would just look at things like, why? Why do some people have all this wealth and power and others are struggling? It makes no sense. Why would we design a world to be that way? We can have it any way we want. There's no rules here. We can all be happy and prosper. Why would we have it any other way? And then as you grow up and get older, you kind of learn, well, it's that way because some people are greedy. Some people want it all for themselves. And that's why most of us don't have, is because these few want it all. And they want all the power and all the say. And so we're stuck in this world that makes no sense. And I think it's a great waste of time for our society. But we've seen what happens when you try to change that system, right? They crucify you or do whatever, whatever they have to do to stop you, because that's the world we're in. But it makes no sense. So all I can do is sing about those things. I wrote a song called Paradise many years ago too. It was about paradise isn't some strange thing out there. It's always here. It's your view of the world, and you can reside in paradise anytime you want. It's right here. And that's kind of the best we can do in this world, is try to be those good energies, those good examples, and wait for the rest of the world to understand that, and understand that we can all be happy. This idea that we're shooting bombs at other people, I've never understood. I'll never understand how that can make any sense to anyone, anywhere, at any time, other than greed. Greed is a killer, and so that's what we're stuck in. Is some people want all that, and the rest of us are trying to do the best we can with it. And as a musician with music, you have a tool to put something out there to the world, to try to make small, tiny little changes. You lay little seeds in people's minds that maybe they can change that or think differently.
Yeah, I love, that you said that as a child, you were clear that it didn't make sense. And it's like, I think about when I hear people say, oh, well, there's not enough money for that. Right. There's not enough. Well, we that would be great, but there's not enough. How are we going to afford healthcare for all?
Yeah.
Right. When we find the money for the bombs, we find the money for the other things. And I mean, one of my favorite philosophers, Alan Watts, I mean, he is noted as saying, like, it's like saying that there's not enough inches. We can't build anything today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's a figurative thing that we hold on to, that we cling to, that we agree it has more meaning than it should. And then we let that rule and dictate our life, kind of being attached to the symbol of the thing versus the actual reality of the thing. And that, as well as allowing greed and whatnot to run rampant.
It makes people uncomfortable. Once you understand this is all an illusion. Everything we live in are just contrived fake rules that we use to try to keep a society in order, but it's all an illusion. It's all made up. There's no reality to it. The bank says you have this many numbers and he has that many numbers. It's all fiction. It's not real. There's nothing real about it. It's just made up. But people get really uncomfortable when you start talking about that, because they want to believe in it. They want to believe it's real somehow, or their mind can't grasp it. But I was born with this other knowledge of it was fiction. I was riding around as a little kid in a car thinking, why do we do this? This makes no sense. And so music was a place I could reside in. It's a place I understood. And I tell people this all the time. And in every interview I say is just music never asked anything of me. It gives me back whatever I put into it. And that's a system that works, you know. There's always a balance there. What you put into it, it gives back to you, and it's a natural flow of energy. And so my brain understood that. That's a place I could live in, and so that's where I remain.
Mm. I'm in for that. Yeah, that's the place I can live too. I feel very parallel, similar to you in that respect, and
Yeah.
it's a great outlook. I mean, I think that's why I feel drawn towards, you know, a meditative life, you know, because so much in our constructed society and life doesn't make sense and is in constant paradox to what would be logical. I mean, I have to find refuge somewhere, and like sitting and being with what is, you know, as often as I can, and reminding myself that these are all fictions. You know, most of this stuff is just a, you know, a passing fiction that, you know, and so is my life in some respect, right? It's a mythical truth of sorts, you know, that it's on its way. It's here now, but like, you know, 50, 100 years, you know, like, I mean, I don't expect anybody to know my name, you know, or to have.
No, it'll change. I've always thought that too. 10,000 years from now, none of this makes any difference. So, you know, you better be living your truest life right now, because why would you live anything else, right?
Learn to love and be loved, right?
In return, right?
Yeah.
That's an important thing. Most people don't know, and it's not easy. It takes work. You're gonna have to rename your show now, Picking Through the Player's Mind, because we've gotten very philosophical here.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. That's my vibe. It's all a trope. It's all just a lure to come in and talk to me about guitar picks and guitar stuff, and then let's see how far out we can get, you know, from one thing.
Good. No, that's what people need to do. They need to just talk about that stuff and get it out there.
Kurt, man, I can't say how much of a pleasure it is. I would like to ask you to maybe, if you had a couple of suggestions of music or artists that we could check out that you love. Maybe you're listening to them. Maybe they're just players you've loved forever, or just a song or anything you could share with us.
Yeah, I listen a lot to the jazz records of the 50s. I'm a big fan of that music. So I listen to a lot of Stan Getz, Oscar Peterson. They did a record together, a trio in 1958. That was really, it's been like remastered, reissued kind of record. I just love it. And Lee Kunitz, some of his mid-50s stuff as well. All that stuff has a real vibe about it that I've just been stuck in for a lot of years, that I listen to those records. So any of that era, I find that just somehow that music settles me. You know, I play so much in the rock pop genre and stuff that when I come home, I like something that just, my mind can't even understand it, you know, and it seems so far out to me, you know, that I love listening to it. You know, Grant Green is a guitar player I love listening to, who's a jazz guy. Just really beautiful, far out stuff. So that's the stuff I kind of listen to. It's been that way for about the last 10 years, actually, of listening to artists like that. When it comes to discovering new music, I'll get in the car with my kids and I'll hear all this stuff that I don't know who it is. I don't know where they're from or anything about them, but there's a lot of great stuff. It just knocks me out. My daughter will play me. That's really, really good stuff. So I know there's still good music going on today too. It's just, it's not always right in front of you. Sometimes you have to go find it.
That is the truth. And it's been, you know, there's so much more. There's like, I mean, you can imagine from just the 70s and 80s till now. I mean, there's been a million years of music produced, you know, like through in every direction, stuff that, you know, we may love. I mean, I constantly think about it. A reoccurring thought is like, there's got to be 100 albums out there every other month that I'm not listening to that I would probably love. Yeah. But I don't have the time. I don't have the lifespan to, you know, to delve into it. So it's kind of a random experience in a way, you know. Like
we don't have a system that really brings it to us too. And that's always been a problem, even with with the old radio format. You were served up certain music, but not all of it. And the streaming argument is that now you can find all that music, but it's still not really being brought to you in a way like, it should be. There should be a lot more different music. I do like that about like Netflix and stuff, where you'll hear stuff from all over the world that's different. So I think those things are good, but you're right. There's so much music out there that's so great that you just never discover, because it really takes a lot of hunting to find it.
Yeah, thankfully, into it. I worked in record stores for years before I was ever in the industry, and that was like, I miss it because it was the thing that it was a place you would go and you'd randomly run into other people, and then the people that work behind the counter would randomly have suggestions. Oh, you like this?
Yeah.
You haven't heard that? Oh, the new one is right here, or that their friends put out this album. They got a different band together, and so you'd have like these. That was the thing, we still have it in the way of reviews now, but like, I just don't trust anything the way I used to trust the people behind the counter, like
I don't trust reviews at all. They're
yeah,
never accurate. And record stores did serve a great purpose back then for that, not just working there, when people come into the store, you could hear all kinds of stuff. And unfortunately that has slipped away. But hopefully we find another format that can start bringing that to people though.
Yeah, I'd love to see a string of artisan, like listening lounges, like where people got together with a dope hi-fi stereo system, sat around with headphones or whatever, and sat, like, we're going to listen to this record tonight, like that, just to try to evoke some of the stuff that I had as a kid, whether it's vinyl or not vinyl or whatever, but to the kind of immersion, listening experiences is, unless you're already, that person, you're not going to get that these days. It's like singles and like clicking from one track on Spotify to another,
I will recommend though, go listen to what your kids are listening to, and you will discover a bunch of stuff that's pretty interesting and different. Than like everything, there's some really good stuff there and some real crap too, but you can discover some interesting music.
That's very true. My little niece tried to get me to listen to Harry Styles, and I was like, oh no, I'm good on that. I'm good on that. But then new album just dropped, and somebody else sends me one of the singles from that, and I didn't even look at who it was. I just started listening to the song.
Yeah.
And I was blown away. And I was like, oh no, it's Harry Styles. And I had to call my niece and be like, hey, you're right. He's great. I was wrong.
There's good stuff everywhere, man. I never prejudge that stuff, because there's a lot of good music. And even if it's an artist you don't really necessarily love, there's a lot of people he might have worked with that were really great, that can then make a great song, and just because someone else is playing it or singing it, someone else might have wrote that song and it's a great song, and it's worth hearing.
That's true. That's so true. I mean, that's been going on for a long time, right? Like I don't listen to Bob Dylan's Watchtower. That's not a thing I do.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe a few people probably still do, but that's not my gig.
Yeah. Man,
Kurt, thank you so much. I appreciate all your time, and I appreciate all the life energy you've put into your work. It shows, like it's on your heart. Your heart is on your sleeve in a lot of ways, with the lyrics and the way that you've, present, what it is you have to say. And I think that that's such a great, like, example of how to be in the world, considering, showing people by the way you live to, like, figure it out yourself and not take the easy, quick way to be there. Like, that's right. Wonderful. And congratulations on this. Was this your 14th record?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, it's so wonderful to see you healthy and doing great work in the world still to this day after all these years. And I hope to catch you live. Sometime, I don't know if you're going to come out to California with this album at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll make it out there.
Cool. Well, I'll try to intercept and try to come out and see you. And I hope you have a great day, man. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on your show. It was nice talking to you.
Players Pick Podcast, Picks and Perspective with Chrys Johnson. Pool table.
Players Pick Podcast is brought to you in part by our good friends at Dunlop Guitar Products, Kiesel Custom Guitars, and our favorite new coffee company, Road Roaster Coffee. use coupon code PlayersPit for 20% off your first order at roadroastercoffee.com.
Pretend